Hi guys, welcome to another video. The last 2 days I went into our five senses, and as you guys know, wherever it leads me, I go that direction. So then finally I landed on the five senses of a human being. So I drew something here and I wrote some notes, my own notes, and I drew my own drawings on there. And that drawing, what you see over here, is actually, I drew it over here a little bit more nicely and more bigger so you can see it in the camera. So this is what I drew, and I will explain it, the five senses. So I was really digging deep into it, into the five senses, etc. And I wrote some notes down while I was observing and investigating those five senses. So let me just start. You can only recognize when it has contact with one of these senses, which is see, hear, touch, smell, and taste. These senses, I think I can put it in the category of organs, because these organs, which is the seeing, you do it with your eyes, the hearing, you do it with your ear, you touch with the finger, you smell with your nose, and you taste with your tongue. So all those senses rely on these organs that exist physically on your body. That's why I call it an organ. And I included also in my fantasy that these organs can be also seen as strings or nerves, like a violin string or guitar string. So these strings represents the five senses: the seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling. Now, the question therefore is, and which I think is what we do the most of the part, either on purpose or without a purpose, or with reason or without a reason, is the question is, if these are the five senses, the seeing, to see, hear, touch, taste, and smell, and if anything has touch, that's why I wrote those separate notes, music notes on it, if those things have contact with those five senses, and the five senses are represented as a string, like a violin string or a guitar string, just to make it more seeable, but that's just my idea. I drew it like this, and it makes somehow, for me, myself, sense that I drew it like music notes and like strings from a violin or guitar, and each string represents a sense: the seeing, the hearing, touching, taste, and smell. And whatever it has contacts to one of these string, it gives a reaction, which we call it then feeling, right? So, but let me go further on it. So I was thinking about what is then thinking, what is thought, thinking, and there was because I looked up on it, and thinking and thought is not represent officially as like one of those senses. So it is not in those five senses. They excluded thinking, thought. The reason why they did that is that thinking or thought is not a physical organ on our body. So there is no physical organ in our body or at our body, like the ear for hearing, or the nose for smelling, or the tongue for tasting, and fingers, you touch things, and to see with your eyes. So you see they're all physical organs you see. But thinking thought has no origin on your body. It's not in your brain. It's so, and that's the interesting thing now. So I was looking it up, and it says, so is there an origin or non-origin, which I'm pointing out the direction of thought, thinking? What is it? So according to the medicine and the science and the doctors, that thought or thinking is not a physical origin, a non-physical, and is therefore excluded of the senses. So I understand that thinking thought is a non-physical in the medical in origin. So I was looking up in a dictionary how certain people, and that certain people can be you or me, they just define and say it's like this and that. So I looked up in the dictionary, and so I looked it up because thought, thinking is a non-physical origin, and it says, I looked up what means non-physical, just to reinvestigate. Non-physical means not relating to or concerning the body. That means that non-physical things are not related and not concerned in any matter to your body. So that means that thinking, thought is not relating or concerning to your body. So there it has to make ching ching. You know, there's a process going on when I'm just listening to that. So thinking thought is not relating to or concerning the body. So I was looking in another field what non-physical means in their definition. So in ontology, O-N-T-O, ontology and philosophy of mind, a non-physical entity, which is thought, thinking, is a spirit or being that exists outside of physical reality. So that's interesting, very interesting too. So that means that thought, thinking is a spirit. It's a being that exists outside of physical reality. And physical reality, physical, if we go back, is everything that is related or concerning to the body, right? So the question is then, and it's not included in those senses, which the five senses, because it's five organs on your body. Thinking thought is not a sense because it's not an organ on your body, right? So these are the things that I've investigated and find very interesting. And furthermore, I was investigating it, that it's really interesting that thought, thinking in the philosophy ontology mind is a spirit or a being that exists outside of physical reality. So that means if people are serious thinker, serious observer, serious honest people who investigate things, who are really like what I do. As you guys know, I'm a deep thinker, investigating, observing, discovering stuff like that. That means that what I do is a spirit of a being that exists outside of physical reality. So my question is, can we only change reality if you are in a state of not, or of a being that is not in the physical reality? And you cannot be, you can only correct or observe or find solutions or fix things if you are in the non-physical reality, which is the thought, the thinking, because that thinking thought allows you to observe the physical reality. And the reason why I drew this is, as we know, I wrote it. For me, it's wonderful that I drew it like this because it makes in such point some. But it's only for me. That's my theory. What I think, that I drew it kind of like a string. The five senses that we react onto it, which we call feelings, is that the seeing, hearing, touching, taste, smell is for me like a string, and if you play on that string or on that violin, it reacts certain feelings or emotions, which you, and that's a crucial point. So my question is now, if the see, to hear, touch, taste, and smell, these five senses are the five organs on your body, and the body is the corpus of your guitar or the corpus of your violin. So if you play one of those strings, which I represent with those beautiful music notes, and each music note represents a thing that has a contact on one of your organs, that it creates or reacts a feeling, which you say then it's an experience, which you say then it's an emotion, it's a feeling. So my question is now, let me put it in the right words. If these five senses, these physical organs, which is represent on your body, seeing, hearing, touching, taste, smell, if this is physical reality, and thinking, thought, is a non-physical reality, it's not in the, is outside of that, right? It's somewhere out there. So my question is, can thinking thought can it operate without those senses, without those physical reality, without those five organs, seeing, hearing, touch, taste, smell, because we know it's the five senses, and it's a physical reality because you see it, it's the ear, the nose, the eye, so it's physical reality, it's an organ. So my question is, can thinking thought operates without in contact or without triggered by those five senses? I know it's a little bit deep, but I hope you get what I'm trying to get at. So can thinking thought operate alone by itself without triggered by those five organs, without those five senses? Seeing, hearing, touching, taste, smell. And now it's a little bit too complicated to go more deeper into it, but it's really incredible, because if thinking and thought can operate by itself, and I know it can operate by itself without seeing, hearing, touching, taste, smell, because if seeing, hearing, touching, taste, and smell is the physical reality, and if someone contacts and plays with our five strings, which represents the five senses, and the reaction onto it is a feeling, and that feeling, that emotion, creates, for instance, the variables of right or wrong, good and bad, and so on. So the question is, when thought thinking is a non-reality, non-physical reality, physical reality. Physical is something you can see, you can touch. Physical reality. So can thought thinking operate by itself without being triggered by those five organs, these five senses, the five physical reality? Because as we know is that in ontology and philosophy, they say that non-physical entity, which is thought thinking, is a spirit, a being that exists outside of the physical reality. So the thing is, if you are capable of just operating in thinking and thought, which is non-physical reality, if you are capable of just be in that state of thought and thinking, which is non-physical reality, which means you can operate thinking and thought without triggering, without reason, by those that causes out of these five senses, that five organs, seeing, hearing, touch, and taste and smell, then I would say that this is the next stage of a life, or a next stage of that is a different kind of entity. I hope you get what I'm trying to explain here. So, as we know, as what they said and what I investigated and I figured out by myself, is that if thinking and thought is a non-physical entity, and we know physical is something you can touch, you can hold, you can grasp. If it's a non-physical entity, and they say is a spirit, a being that exists outside of the physical reality. So beyond the objects, beyond you can touch, you can see, because the five senses are seeing, hearing, touching, taste, and smell. So these are the five organs, and they will be accepted as the five senses of the physical reality. And thought thinking is not a physical reality because it's not an organ like ear or nose or mouth, the tongue, your fingers. So they say it's an entity, it's a spirit or being that exists outside of the physical reality. So we know it exists out of that reality. So if a person like me, who is deep thinker, deep an honest investigator, in philosophy, deep thinking, and I can confirm that if you are in that state all the time, which means you are not in the physical reality, that means that you operate in these things that is not triggered or triggered out by those five senses. The seeing, hearing, touching, taste, and smell, which means feeling, emotion. So if you are in the state that is not triggered by feelings and emotions, you are already in a different entity, in a different kind of art. Because if something triggers out or comes in touch or in contact with your five senses, which are your five strings, that's why I draw strings on it, like the strings on the violin or on a guitar, if it touches those five strings, it reacts an emotion in you. And you judge that emotion by good or bad, nice feeling, bad feeling, etc. And thought and thinking, it's a little bit complicated, but it's really interesting if you go deep into it, how those five senses actually operates. And thinking, thought, which is in the non-physical realm, non-physical reality, it's very interesting. So what I'm trying to get at in that direction is to think and thought and be in that being, which means not in that to be not in that physical reality. And physical reality means things you can touch, you can hold, like the ears, the nose. These are physical reality organs. So if you can be in that state of thought and thinking continuity, then it allows you to observe better, but to be in that thinking thought process that is not triggered by those five strings, that five senses, that five organs. I think this is a higher quality of being somehow, because you don't judge, or that's where I'm getting at, because most people, population, think or thought triggered by a reason or by a cause because of these things: seeing, hearing, touching, taste, smell. But you have to think, to thought or to think that is not triggered by a reason or by a cause, and that is a higher, a higher or kind of a new entity, or a it's like separating. You separate yourself away from your body. I think that's a good. That just popped in my head. If you are in thinking thought entity, which is non-physical reality, that then you are in a state of separating yourself from your body. This is the body, the physical organ, your body, with the five strings, violin strings, guitar strings, the five senses. And thought and thinking is non-physical, has no origin, no body, and it's separating. So the body goes its way, it ages, gets old, and the thinking process, the thinking, the thought, the spirit being goes on another level or another kind. It's very interesting. So I hope you could follow my investigation, my pattern, what I'm trying to figure out. So thank you for watching.